Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chats with Yvonne. I'm your host, Yvonne, and I'm on a mission to humanize the public speaking experience, and these chats are my special way of doing just that. Today's guest is the co-founder of Peña Consulting. So with that, let's welcome Fabio to the virtual stage. Round of applause, please. Everyone's applauding right now. At the moment, Fabio, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. What I like to start off these chats with is an introduction of who you are. And I always say you can pretty much introduce yourself in whatever way you'd like to. So over to you.
Okay, yeah. So what's up, everyone? My name is Fabio. I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, but I moved to Washington State when I was like 2 years old. And so I was, I guess, fairly accustomed to the life here in the US. But I was raised in the central part of the state in Yakima, Washington, which is like a rural area. And so like my family, my parents worked like in agriculture. And so I was raised kind of like on the east side of the state, but I went over to the west side to Seattle for my undergrad at the University of Washington. And I graduated in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in communications. And I suck at communicating.
No, you don't.
Which is funny. So, but anyways, I've always had like a passion for like business. And so like my career is in business. I work in finance and accounting. And I actually just recently started my MBA program at Seattle University this last fall. And yeah, I guess that's me in a nutshell, but.
Amazing. And I'd like to, the first thing that I will say, because it is my duty to do this, is no, you do not suck at communication, because what you just did there is you communicated. So you're good. And with that, I'd love to, the way that I know you and is through Instagram. So, and specifically through your business, Peña Consulting. So tell us a little bit about how you started, what it is. Can you take us on that journey with you and maybe introduce us to your mission?
Yeah, so it's every time I get asked that, I feel like I almost give a different response because it's a strange but like new business model. So I originally started like the firm as like a consulting firm, giving like professional services to small and medium-sized companies, which was, the main purpose of it, because I think it was like 2020 during the pandemic, I was laid off for like 7 months. And I was like, you know what, never again. If I ever am like without a job, I'll have at least my consulting practice, to find money somehow, right? And so that's where the Peña Consulting came from. The name Peña and Co is basically because like in management consulting, there's like these two really big consulting firms that exist. There's like McKinsey and Co and Bain and Co, I think. Anyways, point of it is that it sounded so white. And so I wanted to add like my background to it, Peña, and just like make it my own thing. And then I guess fast forward a little bit, I created the social media pages for Peña and Co. And a lot of my first few posts were kind of like just business and consulting related, but I didn't know if I just wanted to provide that kind of content. And so what I noticed, what was getting a lot of engagement was like it was my followers that I ended up going to school with. And, one thing that we all had in common was that we were like all first generation college students. And I was like, well, maybe I can, provide a different kind of consulting and, go down that route. And it wasn't until I posted one of the first, experiences as a first gen going through college. It was a post that like me and my wife worked on, and we're just talking about like everything that, goes with being a first generation student and all the struggles with that. And that seemed to get a lot of more engagement. And so that's why I decided to take that page down that route. And so it's kind of like a blend between like management consulting and community. And so, yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. And so when someone goes to you for your services, what can they expect to get out of it? What is sort of the experience that they get when they
come? So there's, I guess, like two types. One is like the management consulting, which I can work with clients, small, medium-sized companies, startups, and I provide services like on strategy, operations, finance and accounting. And I've had a couple of clients there, but a lot of my time, it's because it's being balanced between school and work and life and everything. It's kind of hard to do everything all at once. And then in terms of like the first generation community, Peña and Co offers like a mentorship program where we pair a first gen student with a professional, regardless of like area of study or career path. And just, to provide that helping hand and give that connection to someone who's barely starting out their college journey, so.
That's awesome. And I do want to ask you a little bit more about your mentorship program. But before we go there, because the chats are all about humanizing the public speaking experience and understanding that we all have our own, whether we like to think about it or not, in general, what has been your exposure to public speaking? This can be everyday life. What kinds of feelings has it evoked for you in the past?
Well, it's been, according to my friends, are like, oh, you'll do fine because, you like social settings, which is true, I guess. But I still get super nervous when it comes to public speaking, especially like at work, because I'm speaking with, people who are not first generation students or people who have, white skin color, like white folks. And I get kind of nervous and I tend to lose my words or not, I forget to breathe. I think I told you that. I think I responded to one of the questions, but a lot of the public speaking experience I had was, I guess, through like leadership camps that I was like involved with, speaking as like a leader, facilitator. And so speaking to like a lot of students, and then at work as well, giving like, quarterly reports or updates to like the company. And so that's kind of where my experience is. I'm not really like a keynote speaker, public speaker at events. I don't know if I could be at that level, but maybe one day, I don't know. We'll see.
I think you can be. I totally think you can be. And I think anyone and everyone can be. And really how we get there is taking those different experiences that we have, whether it be at a meeting, whether it be leading or facilitating a small scale event, is how you lead up to it, right? And what you pointed to is comfort level, right? Is you among your friends, sometimes like, yeah, you're lively. Yeah, you're a people person. You're a great communicator, right? And so maybe sometimes when we think of ourselves as not great communicators is because we feel like we have to show up to that meeting with a whole bunch of white people or people that don't look like us or don't speak our language. We feel like we have to show up there as a different version than who we are. And so because of that, because we're brought to this space where maybe we can't be as authentic as we'd like to, se nos olvidan las palabras. We're like, oh my gosh, should I even say that word right? I think me, for example, at a meeting, I said, this is so embarrassing. Instead of like a post-mortem, like, let's go back and think about what we did, I said postpartum. And postpartum, and I was like, I totally didn't mean that, right? And so it happens to all of us. And, I made it a point to call it out in the meeting and say, I totally didn't mean that. But that comfort that I have to say, whoops, I didn't mean it, it is something that you develop over time. That doesn't just happen, especially when you're in spaces like this, right? And so all of that to say, we oftentimes do come into spaces where maybe we just don't feel as comfortable. And because of that, we think we lack in public speaking, but we truly don't. It's just that we've lost practice with maybe being able to be ourselves in certain situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like the authenticity part that really defines like how well I'm gonna do like when I speak publicly. So like when I'm at work, because I'm trying to like balance, my personal life and work, I find myself like the Mexican side of me coming out when I'm like at work. And so like when I'm transitioning slides, like I will ask like, does anybody have any questions, like any comments? And there's like silence. And I'm like, okay, pues. And so and I'm like, whoops, I did not just say that,
That's funny.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I love that. And so in talking about your own experiences with public speaking and how one of your focuses is mentorship for the first generation community, in your opinion, what's the general relationship we have with the art of public speaking? Is it something that you could potentially mentor folks in the future?
Me, I mean, I don't know if I could mentor other students on like, mastering public speaking, because I feel like that's something that I would need to do first. But what I could do, because it is a mentorship program, is connect them with, a public speaking expert, maybe like yourself, for example, and, get them connected and provide that sort of connection. And so it really just depends. So like, for example, like, we had this guy who is, I can't remember what school, I think it was like Iowa State University or something, but he is in the school of law, on track to become a lawyer, and he signed up to be a mentor for anybody who's trying to get into that field. Right. And so if anybody's interested in law, we'll go ahead and, make that connection. And so I guess the same would be to like with public speaking, like if somebody is trying to look for a mentor, or if somebody's looking for, somebody to help out, then we'll provide that. But I don't know if that answered your question.
It did. Yeah, totally. And I think that, it falls in line with what we were just talking about, which is maybe as first generation, we're not oftentimes comfortable in certain spaces, but I think having services like yours allows us to build our confidence in whatever sort of way we want to take it. It doesn't have to be public speaking, but in this case. And so my next question, we touched on authenticity a bit, and if people haven't checked out your reels, they totally should. They should go on your page and follow you, but your reels are crazy fun and creative. And it seems that you're your authentic self when you're creating these reels. So one of the aspects of public speaking, as we mentioned, is that is this piece on authenticity. What's your advice for translating the authenticity in your reels to public speaking engagements, for example?
Oh man, that's a hard question. At least it sounds hard. The thing is, like when I create my reels, I try to be myself, because that's where I get the most creative, and I feel like when if I try to like create something that's just not me, then I'll often find myself stressing about it, or it just won't come naturally. And so I guess that kind of ties into public speaking, because everybody has different speaking styles. At least that's what I've noticed with a lot of influencers and mentors in my life. And so what if I were to try to copy someone else, then I just know that it's not going to be natural and it's not going to flow. And besides that, the whatever message I'm trying to deliver to my audience just won't resonate, or it won't be like relatable. And so really, when you're speaking in front of a group of people, I'm assuming that, I'm assuming the point is that you're trying to get a message across to your audience, right? And so if you're not being yourself, then they're just gonna be like, what? Like, that didn't make sense, or I don't understand, or, and so I guess that's what I have to say about that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and I agree, right? You go into it being yourself, and if you don't take it that route, then it's just not going to come out as authentic as it probably should, or as you would want it to, minimizing your impact. I don't know if you watched the documentary, but I did, and I cried for days. The Walter Mercado documentary that came out, it was on Netflix.
No, I haven't seen that one.
It was probably right, maybe 2-3 months in to the stay at home order, maybe. But one of the quotes that he said was, they asked him, when you go up on stage, like, do you rehearse? Like, what do you do? And he said something that I have just always stood by, which is, I never rehearse to be myself. Right. And so when you're doing public speaking, there are certain points that you need to hit. And so you rehearse to make sure you don't forget those points. But when you show up as yourself, you don't need to rehearse that, because you are who you are and you'll show up as that person. So that's sort of, I also see that relating to how you create your reels and your content.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I try. I just try to be myself. Like, I know sometimes I'll think like, okay, I look a little silly doing this, but it's like, whatever. But I definitely agree that like, if you're not yourself, then it's going to be more difficult than it has to be. So why try to imitate someone else when you can just be yourself?
Exactly. And it's also just part of the human experience, right? Like, I can't and won't always be professional Yvonne. I can't and always, be funny Yvonne, right? I'm a mixture of all these things all at once at all times. And so I think that you're right. When you show up as just, hey, I'm kind of funny sometimes, I'm kind of silly sometimes, and I don't know how this will be received, but it's me, and it's totally just what I want to put out there. So it makes it that much better for everybody on the receiving end.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I love to say practice. That's like my word of the year, my word of life, and my number one probably tip for anybody looking to master the art of public speaking. So how does practice, in whatever way that means to you, show up in your industry, specifically in the work that you do?
I think that's a good question. In my line of work, because I currently work as like a financial controller for a manufacturing company. And so part of that comes with like updating the company on, on earnings or something. And so the one thing that I have to like make sure is absolutely correct are the numbers, because if I'm delivering like incorrect numbers, that can be really bad. I can get
in
like
trouble.
yeah, like besides, reporting the wrong numbers to like our management team or like to a bank or something, it could trigger some type of audit. It can have people question my credibility, which can hurt me as a professional in that position. And then it would just go downhill from there. But when I'm like presenting like some type of presentation, I need to make sure that my information is accurate. And then I start practicing how I want to deliver, like which part do I want to start talking to my company as like talking about goals and like highlights versus when do I want to start talking about the numbers. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, talking about like the transitions and the outline of what I will be presenting. And so it always changes. It's something that I'm still trying to figure out. And so
that's super important. And it does take practice to try to figure out what resonates with people, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure that when you're presenting to people that care about the numbers, but sometimes there may be some people in the room that actually care a little bit more about the impact on people or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. I'm glad you brought that up, because at work, sometimes nobody cares about the numbers. They don't care about that stuff because they find it boring. And so one of the challenges that I find is trying to make it fun. That's, I think, fun and engaging, because when you're at work presenting, like I know, like when I at least sit in on meetings, I'm like, when is this over? I gotta do stuff, or when is lunch? So I think you brought up a good point, making it fun and engaging.
Well, let me know when you figure out how to make financials fun and engaging.
Gosh, just the word sounds so funny.
I know. Well, I think that's super important, because you have to know who your audience is and how they're going to take the information in, right? No one wants to sit in a meeting and see a whole bunch of numbers on the screen that they don't necessarily understand or know how they're applicable to the work that they do specifically, right? And so it's this challenge between trying to accommodate to the masses, which is everybody in the audience, versus really honing in on how each individual contributes to the finances, right? So starting from, these are our goals, these are our objectives, or something super inspiring, like in your line of work, when you think of numbers, what's the relationship there, right? And just starting with a prompt that folks can use to then guide how they approach the rest of your presentation. Because, maybe even sometimes for you, putting those statements together may be a little bit like, gosh, how am I going to get the people to actually care about this?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like one other thing that you pointed out was like knowing your audience. And so our company is pretty small right now, because everybody who's like, for example, like our sales reps are out in the field trying to sell, like our technicians are out doing service work. And so it's just like a limited amount of people in the office that I need to deliver information to. And sometimes like their personalities, they're kind of like very dry. And so they're just going to listen and not say anything throughout the whole thing. And then there are those who like to talk and like to interrupt and like, oh, where was I again? So it's something that I'm figuring out. But
yeah, well, like I said, when you figure it out, let us all know, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And with that, I'd love to, the last couple of questions are just, if you have any closing thoughts about the relationship between public speaking and what you do and how you approach your business, or how you would like to form relationships with our first gen community, let us know. Let us know how we can support you. Where should we follow you? And how can we support you in your journey and your work?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think one thing that ties it all together is, delivering what Peña and Co is about and what we do and why we do it, right? And so that's something that I'm still like learning along the way. And of course, we have social media pages to help out with that. And so you can find Peña and Co on Instagram at Peña.consulting, or you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook. And so it's all under the same domain. But yeah.
Yeah, and you should all be able to check out the bio and see all of the tags there as well. But I really want to thank you, Fabio, for taking the time to talk to me today. I know this is a form of public speaking. Hopefully it's not as stressful and fearful as a couple of the other ones or meetings
Yeah, no,
you're
no,
in.
it's not.
But I appreciate the time that you took to humanize the public speaking experience for us, because we all experience it in different ways and we all have a unique journey that I am just so passionate about sharing. So thank you so much for taking the time. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yvonne. I definitely appreciate the opportunity as well. I can see that you're used to this, and I'm like, oh my God, I suck at this.
No, you don't. And
Okay.
it's fine. You followed Chats with Yvonne, so you're in good hands.
All right, sweet. Yeah, I'll definitely need to look into like your services, because I forget to breathe and I get sweaty, and
Oh, I've got the techniques for those. So yeah, reach out to me, and anybody else, reach out to Fabio if you have any questions about what he does, or find that maybe he can help you in your own journey. So with that being said, thank you so much. Bye, everybody.